other issues, COVID-19 related. The third wave of COVID-19 has seen many people losing their lives, and this is more people than during the first two waves. In the past 24-hour reporting cycle, more than 500 people have passed away. This is a trend that has been seen in the recent days. There are concerns that the city of Joburg will run out of burial space. To confirm this or decry it, we joined by Mr. Reggie Moloi from the Johannesburg City Parks. He's the spokesperson there. Mr. Moloi, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. There are these concerns that there might be a shortage of space for people to be buried. Is this indeed a valid concern?
Good afternoon, Chami. For now, we can confidently say Joburg is okay in terms of burial space. This I say because we are currently left with 1,064,000 burial plots, meaning the individual graves that people can be buried in that are currently fresh and available. And this also includes the reserved ones that were requested through provincial structures, that we need to leave space separate should the need arise, that when demand exceeds capacity, we should be able to do this fine. Of course, depending on whether or not the spike is going to go higher than what we expect, then maybe things might change. But for now, we're okay. Thanks.
Mr. Moloi, 1 million graves sounds like a big number. But if you focus on the fact that in just 24 hours, 500 people were reported dead in the area, and by mid-July, the burials were sitting at 2,800. How do these numbers compare to pre-COVID-19 days? On average, how many people would you be burying, let's say, in a day or in a week?
Yeah, it's true, Tammy. The numbers have gone very high. Let me just give you the stats in terms of the last 2 months or 3 months, May, June, and July. For May, for the whole of May, we had done 1920, which is 1,920 burials. Then the spike happened in June. We did 3,058. So you can see it has just tripled. For July, as we're sitting here on the 22nd, we're sitting at 3,728. So that's the kind of numbers we deal with. Now, ordinarily, in a weekday, like today, it's Thursday, we would have done maybe 5 or 6 at any given cemetery because it was midweek. And then come to weekend, we would have done 60 or 70. But right now, the numbers daily are going in the region of 50, 60, 80. Sometimes even Oliphant's Play had 135 in one day in a weekend. So that's what we're dealing with currently. But like I'm saying, comfortably right now, the space is still fine, unless drastically things change that might put us maybe in trouble.
Should the numbers continue on this trajectory, how long do you anticipate it will take for the city of Johannesburg to use up its 1 million available graves?
You see, ordinarily we had projected our space to go and last us anything from 40 to 50 years if under normal circumstances. But the amount of space that we've used already, especially considering our newest cemetery, which is Oliphant's Play, already all the developed areas have already been taken up. We are moving on outside the developed areas to create space. If this trajectory continues, we might be reduced by almost 5 to 10 years space that would have been used by the time the pandemic goes, if ever it's going to go.
And what is the situation at the moment as far as cremations are concerned?
Yeah, to date, in the month of July already, cremations are 244 just for July in terms of COVID cases. And then burials in terms of COVID cases are 292 just for the month of July till the 22nd. So those are the kind of numbers we are dealing with right now.
And how would you propose South Africans and families deal with this? Is it possible for more than one person to occupy a gravesite?
Yeah, no, it's true. For the past 2-3 years, we've been going out vigorously on awareness campaign in terms of promoting what we call alternative burial methods, meaning families can come to the cemetery when they have a bereavement and ask to reuse a family grave, and we will dig it up for them, open it up so that they can bury somebody else, especially in our older cemeteries. At Olifantsvlei, we are digging deeper, meaning 3 meters, where families can actually bury 3 family members in there. Now, when you look at what is happening currently, for instance, this week alone in the southern Johannesburg, which is Avalon and the cemeteries around the area in Soweto, just for this week alone, we are dealing with 231 reopens, meaning the awareness campaign that we've been embarking upon is bearing fruit, because only this week 231 burials have been booked for second burials by the families. So that is actually helping us, because if these 231 in the south of Joburg were to go to Olifantsvlei, it will impact on the numbers that we're currently dealing with around there. Because today, Olifantsvlei alone has 52 burials, West Park has 38, and in the North Waterfall has 22. Now you can imagine, if all these were not also some of them going to reopens, they will be taking up more space and reducing the capacity that we currently have.
Is there a time period that needs to pass between one burial and a reopening?
Yes, we do have. Ordinarily, we would require at least 24 months for the next burial to be happening. But when you go to a cemetery like Olifantsvlei in the south of Joburg, where we're digging deeper, we can even do it in a year, because we don't even get to the first body when we dig. We will just be maybe about 1.5 meters just above that one. We can still do, because with ordinary graves that are 2 meters, as soon as you dig, you reach the previous body that is buried there, and if it has not yet completely decomposed to an extent that there are no risk of infections, we would have done it earlier. That's why we're asking for 2 years, so that we can be able to do it.
There was a time, Mr. Moloi, where families were concerned about coffins being stolen in graves. Is this still a problem?
Ma'am, we have not in Joburg experienced any queries like those, because what we're doing, and what I always explain when people raise that challenge, is that our holes are just slightly bigger than the coffin, just to allow the coffin to fit in and be lowered into the grave. Now, for anyone to be able to take out the grave, they need to be standing on top of it, a coffin. And how are they going to take it out when there is not even space to put in whatever they're going to lift it with? So it's very difficult, and the depth at which we're burying, it makes it difficult for anyone to want to do that. 3, they will have to pass the gate if they want to bring a crane to be able to steal a coffin, because you'll only need a crane, and 2, you'll need a machine to dig wider so that you can put your whatever cables under the coffin that you want to take it out to do that. So it's practically impossible right now. I'm speaking specifically in Joburg, because we have never received complaints like those that coffins are missing.
We spoke earlier on, Tate Moloi, about alternative burying practices and alternative burying ways. What type of advice would you give to families during these times of COVID-19, where you find families, burying each other, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 members of a family? What are the kind of considerations that perhaps need to be made, and how can they make this process easier for themselves?
We have various ways that we do. One of them, obviously, is cremation. Cremation saves us space, helps us to sustain our current space for longer. 2, reopen, which is the reuse of an existing family grave. There are those graves, for instance, cemeteries in Soweto that are older, like Doornkop, Mansfield, Dobsonville, and all. They are very old cemeteries where we can still go and dig to check if we can still bury a third person. So we are embarking on such practices so that maybe families can actually, during visiting times after the burials, they can visit one cemetery where they find that they have more than one grave, but in those graves, there are other second burials that have happened for the second family. They can go there. Over and above that, we can also go to cemeteries like Jorankop that are over 60 years old, dig up the grave per request of the family, and they can still be allowed to bury two other family members. So that actually is even cheaper than when you go into a new grave at a new cemetery.
It seems like there is a rise in awareness as far as cremation is concerned, specifically among African families. But for those who may not know how cremation works, how does it work? And then what happens to the families or the individual's ashes after the cremation process?
Yeah, the choices are made by the families at the time of bereavement. They go to the undertaker and say to the undertaker that they want to do a cremation. Then a booking is made through a crematoria in Joburg. We've got two, one in Braamfontein, one in Lenasia next to Avalon. They go there, make a booking, and then time and date is given for them to be present. Sometimes families would just want to send the coffin after a service was held either at the home or at the church. Sometimes other family members might want to come to our chapel to do a service before the cremation. What happens after that is that the family will make a request whether or not they want the ashes. When they want the ashes, they will also specify the amount of ash they want, so that then it can be put in a container that they're going to supply to us, then they get the ashes themselves. Any excess ash that remains, we've got what we call an ash grave, where it's dumped in there because the families don't need it anymore. But we ensure that the family get the right to choose what they want to do with their ashes, whether all of it or part of it.
And how popular are cremation processes now, specifically among African families?
Yeah, since the arrival of the COVID, it has actually picked up. And my suspicion is that mainly because funerals are now no more big numbers. Numbers are reduced to 50. So families choose crematoria, because with crematoria it becomes less now, because we will use 50% of the capacity of the venue, and it also minimizes on time. And when we look at our stats, we're already sitting at almost 10 to 15% increase of the African people cremating so far.
Reggie Moloi, we thank you very much for your time as well as your insight. Some very important information for us to be aware of. He is the spokesperson for Johannesburg City Parks.